An 83-year-old man once told a story about money that I haven't been able to forget. He built two businesses in his lifetime. The first one failed. The second one made him more money than he ever imagined. The day he sold that business, he walked out of the bank, sat in his car in the parking lot, and felt absolutely nothing. But he says the most important lesson he ever learned about money didn't come from business. It came from a man named Jack. Because Jack had $2 million in the bank and still lost the life he was saving it for.
Jack was the sharpest man he ever knew. This was 1968. Leather chair, good cigar, an office window looking down on the city. And Jack had a number in his head, the kind of number some men believe in the way others believe in religion. Every time they talked, Jack said the same thing. 5 more years. I grind 5 more years. Then I'm done. He had the whole future mapped out. Italy, painting, slow mornings, long dinners that lasted until midnight. The life he kept promising himself. And a strange part? Jack already had $2 million sitting quietly in accounts he barely looked at. But something happened 3 days after that conversation, something that completely changed the way this 83-year-old man thinks about money.
3 days later, Jack walked out of his office building in the afternoon. He took a few steps onto the sidewalk. Then he stopped. He grabbed his chest and collapsed right there on the pavement. Jack was 42 years old. He never saw Italy. He never bought a single canvas. He never lived the life he kept postponing. And standing at Jack's funeral, the old man said he kept doing arithmetic in his head. Not the money arithmetic, the other kind. The years Jack had traded for a future that never arrived. The dinners eaten alone at his desk. The weekends his children grew up without him. The mornings he chose the number instead of the people sitting right in front of him. The tragedy wasn't that Jack died. We all do that eventually. The tragedy was that Jack spent his entire life in a waiting room and the door never opened.
The old man says something uncomfortable after telling that story. He says most people are doing exactly what Jack did, living in a waiting room and calling it a life. I'll travel when I hit my number. I'll slow down after the promotion. I'll enjoy life once the mortgage is gone. But the goalposts move every single time. He says he has met people with $10 million who still can't sleep at night. They're not free. They're just wealthy prisoners. Because here's the part no financial spreadsheet ever shows. You are already spending your life every single day. The real question isn't whether you're paying. The question is what you're buying.
The old man says there are 6 things he wishes someone had told him when he was younger. Lesson 1. Do the mortality math. Take your current age. Now add 20 years. That is your vitality window. The years where your knees still work, your mind is sharp, and you can actually do the things you keep promising yourself you'll do someday. For most people, that leaves somewhere between 15 and 30 summers. Write that number down. That is the real balance in your account. Suddenly, the urgent email doesn't feel quite as important. Lesson 2. Open an experience fund. Starting this week, take 10% of everything you earn. Put it in a separate account with one rule. It cannot be invested. It can only be spent on experiences, now. A weekend trip you keep postponing, a pottery class you've always been curious about, a dinner with someone who matters. Not someday, now. Because this isn't wasting money, it's buying your life back from the waiting room. Lesson 3. The compound interest nobody teaches. Everyone talks about compound interest in money, but there's another kind. Compound interest in memory. If you take a trip at 35, that memory pays dividends for 40 years. You remember it, you tell stories about it, you share it with your children and grandchildren. But if you wait until 70, the dividend is much shorter, and some investments can't be made at all. Lesson 4. The hidden cost column. Most financial advice shows you only one side of the ledger, income. But every hour you trade for money also costs something. The old man worked 60 hours a week for 30 years. That's more than 93,000 hours. He sometimes wonders what he would have done with those hours if the job hadn't claimed them. A career can be a fair trade, but it's still a trade. Don't confuse it for a life. Lesson 5. Spend on the living. When he sold his business, the old man left his children a considerable inheritance, but he also left them a father who had missed most of their dinners growing up. He's still not sure which one mattered more. The best investment he made in the last 20 years cost $200. He took his daughter to the coast, just the two of them. They sat and talked for 6 hours. He says that was the best return he ever received on anything. Lesson 6. Know your enough number. Not your retirement number, your enough number. The point where you stop accumulating and start living. Most people never calculate it because no one asks them to. But if you write down what your life actually needs to feel full, you may discover the number is much smaller than the one you're chasing.
The old man lives in a small room now. A bed, a chair, and a photograph of his wife Eleanor on the dresser. He says something interesting about memory. When he sits quietly in that room, he doesn't replay business deals. He replays Sunday mornings, a house full of noise, coffee brewing in the kitchen, his daughter calling his name from the hallway when she was 3 years old. That's what people get to keep. Not the accounts, not the numbers. The love they gave, the time they shared, the mornings they chose to be present. So tonight, he suggests one small exercise. Think of one thing you've been telling yourself you'll do when you have enough. One trip, one conversation, one afternoon with someone you've been too busy for. Write it down. Then write the date you're going to do it. Not someday, a real date. Because the perfect time never arrives. Life is always messy, always slightly unfinished. That's not a reason to wait. That's simply what life looks like. Jack probably knew that somewhere deep down. He just didn't act on it in time. You still can. And remember, most people never decide their enough number. They just keep running. Don't be one of them. If this story made you think, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it.